welcome to PocketWatch, where we deep dive on the best and worst film and TV the universe has to offer. I'm Stephanie Bendixson, and in this episode, we are trick-or-treating the streets of WandaVision Episode 6, and today I am joined by none other than Gus Ronald and Will Yates. In a universe-bending play, we've recast Nick with a very similar-looking Gus. Are you happy to be here?
I'm very happy to be here, yeah. I'm happy to step in as the more charming and, the actual fan favorite version that everyone loved. So, yeah, it works for me.
And William, you're nearly 15 now. Do you think we'll see a show of some powers soon?
I really hope so.
All right, I'll start off with a spoiler warning. As always, we are going to be discussing WandaVision Episode 6 in detail, plot, everything. Obviously, this is a podcast about the show, and we're going to be referencing previous shows as well. But if you haven't seen any of WandaVision and you think you might want to, just tuck this into your pocket for next time. You know, when you have seen it and you want to deep dive, theorize, join us. Let's do a temperature check. We like to just sort of get the feel of everyone in terms of how they felt about the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we start with you, Gus, as the newcomer? Have you
Sure.
been enjoying the season, and how do you feel like this episode held up in the sort of overall arc of everything?
Yeah, totally. No reason to hold back my fandom for this. Like, I'm really loving this series. I've been watching along with you guys, listening to this. And yeah, this series is so creative in a way that really like tickles my fancy, particularly with the whole, like all the homages to different TV styles and tropes. I knew that's what they were going to go into when they decided to pitch this and said, this is the story they're telling. And I didn't realize how strong they were going to go with that aesthetic. I thought it would be like a sort of gimmick for one or two eps, and then they'd move on with all the, the sword and shield stuff we've been seeing, and would be pulled out of that. So I have a heap of respect for how much they are just like going hard with all these different time periods and different genres of TV that I know you guys said in particular. You have a lot of fondness for your Bewitches and your I Love Lucy's, which I caught growing up. But now we're in the realm of the shows that I really do cherish and that I watched a lot of, which is obviously moving up to the episode we just watched, which was a homage to 2000s. I was going to say 90s, but no, it's more a 2000s sort of genre, which I will get into in a bit. But I'm just really enjoying that that's where they're still going with it and that they're sticking to their guns. And and then the story that's underlying it all, the mystery of it all, has me hooked in the way that it's what everyone's talking about around the water cooler kind of thing. And I'm getting really attached to it. I'm getting attached to particular characters, and I'm keen to see where it goes. And beyond just the usual kind of like, I'm watching it on the side, it's like I'm hanging out for Friday nights to watch it, which hasn't happened in a long time.
Totally. People are literally counting the days between episodes. Will, how did you feel about this episode?
I thought it was good fun. I got my one wish, basically, with the kids that I've been holding on to for so long. I wanted to see more of them, and this episode was definitely theirs. For me, this is a strange one where I really enjoyed the ride, but there was something different about this one at the end. I usually would like run to my phone to like call my mates and be like, let's talk about the episode. But this one didn't quite have as much for me in terms of that kind of like hype level by the end of it. But it definitely feels like maybe something to set up for next week.
Do you mean in terms of like there weren't enough kind of like hectic reveals or questions?
Yeah, there was less questions raised, a few answers like somewhat revealed, but it definitely felt like it was definitely more so laying the groundwork for the final 3 episodes. It was almost the rest before the storm, I guess.
It gave them a lot of time to, kind of spend a little more time on the reveals and the questions that have been answered in the previous episode and let them play in that realm, which is nice because, again, if we're playing catch up ep by ep by ep, it's like have some downtime, so to speak, and this felt like it had a little more downtime and actually played in that. I mean, obviously the one we're going to mention, it's the Malcolm in the Middle sort of homage. They were back in that sitcom for a little bit longer of the episode versus the previous one, which I think, Will, you mentioned was kind of like a Family Ties throwback. They got out of that pretty quick. They spent the majority of that episode in kind of like everything's falling apart, no one knows what's going on. So I liked that they stuck to this playfulness for a little bit longer and let you just take a breath.
I think as well because there are like really obvious visual cues to the Malcolm in the Middle style format that were really fun to play with. And there was less of that with Family Ties. I never saw Malcolm in the Middle, but I remember seeing ads for it and like clips and things like that. So I remember it being a show that was on and sort of popular at the time, but I've like never seen an episode of it. But I can see with all of the style of shooting and the sort of hyper sort of stylized camera work and the way the characters interact with each other and the fourth wall breaking and all that kind of stuff is really cool. And I think that the reason why they wanted to spend a bit more time with that is because it is a genre that is focusing on this kind of family unit now of Wanda and Pietro and the kids, and Vision's kind of on the fringe there as he's trying to figure out what's going on. So it worked really well. And I think it's interesting because, you know, how we did say that Nick and I really loved Bewitched and all those early stuff and how we wish they spent more time there. But I've come to realize now that as the sitcoms themselves evolve over the sort of decades of television, they've become more in depth in dealing with more real life, more serious and complex issues. And that's kind of like the experience that we're seeing with Wanda and the relationships around her are becoming more complex as well. So it's kind of a necessary evolution as much as it is a visual style choice.
Totally. And I like that, you know, you could still continue homaging sitcoms in the traditional sense of, you know, live audience, canned laughter, you know, not crossing that line of where the set starts and pushes in, and purely from an aesthetic kind of visual aspect. Like that has run its course by the Family Ties era, which is nice because, they could have pushed on with a kind of like Everyone Loves Raymond or a Seinfeld or, you know, not that they're as much family based with your Seinfelds, but, you know, that continues 2.5 Men there. But it's nice that they've decided to go, hey, that, you know, comedies and TV styles evolved. And Malcolm in the Middle is one that like brought with it, you know, you've got all those dynamic camera angles around a full living, breathing house. You've got the kid narrating to the camera, which I remember when it started.
It was a little bit wackier and kind of more chaotic than some of the traditional canned laughter sitcoms.
And then you had, as you mentioned, your cutaways or your sort of whipaways, which then your shows like Scrubs and stuff really took and ran with as well. So it's giving them more toys to play with, because I think we've done everything we can in the sort of, as I said, that staged sitcom kind of environment. So that's why I was really enjoying that.
And everyone's saying that the next likely step from here is to go into like a Modern Family direction. So, and that's also a lot of fourth wall breaking as well, which is the thing to do now. But let's break it down scene by scene as we have been. We opened with those amazing, obviously, opening titles that were sort of very Malcolm in the Middle-esque. We had that fourth wall breaking, and Pietro was bonding with the kids.
What a crazy family! Just it looks like they never get any downtime.
Yeah, I loved it. It was cool to see the Sokovia flashback, that kind of momentary, very like Eastern European stereotype of them trick-or-treating and getting the fish.
That was so strange in the sense that it was like, it was funny and it fit perfectly with the style they're going for, but it actually had a lot to say. And I think this is what we'll get onto later in the episode, because like, they were hanging on a lot of those tropes from that kind of wacky sitcom, but really punch in the gut with some stuff that made you go like, there's a lot under the surface here.
Yeah. And then we had Vision, who was obviously super cognizant of the fact that he can't be playing along with these characters anymore, and he needs to kind of trick Wanda into thinking he's going on a neighborhood watch, but really he's got to try and figure out what's happening. And it still has me so confused, because I feel like in this episode we kind of got to see that Vision is a construct that can really only exist within this world. But then if he's a construct of Wanda, he's like completely independent in his thinking, and obviously him trying to sort of break down what's happening. So I just don't understand how that works. What is he? How is he?
I have answers, but I want Will to answer, because mine are just shots in the dark.
Yeah, well, I mean, mine are very much too.
This is the place for shots in the dark, man.
Change that title, Gus.
Exactly.
I mean, I can only assume it comes down to that thing from last week where Wanda is able to create a lot more than I think we expected, where she could completely change Monica's clothes to still be Kevlar, but be, you know, look at the way it does. I think she has recreated Vision, but it is a bit of that factor of physically she can't. Well, the force field is there, so she can sustain all of her changes. but when they leave, it's a bit harder to do. But I guess, yeah, then those clothes are fine. That's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd like to kind of think it's that, and again, please excuse any of my missteps here for like comic book lore and what's happened in the past, but it does feel like this episode is one where we really got a sense of how her powers, or, you know, how her magic actually works. And we got that when we saw kind of like the radius of what she can affect. And we saw that when Vision kind of decides to walk away from that. As you said, he sort of tricks Wanda and sneaks away. And you start to see this, like the simulation breaking down the further that he gets away from it. So first of all, you've got that as kind of like, right, it has a radius within the hex that is like what she can, as she moves around the world, that's what happens. And in regards to Vision, while I don't think there's a clear-cut answer yet, I do think that if you then think of how Wanda would set this up subconsciously or purposely, she would pour as much of her energy and power into Vision. Vision is the other main character and the reason she is doing all of this. So my theory is that that's why he has more independence and more, you know, cognitive awareness, is because she's put, if you were measuring it, like, you know, 80% of her magic into Vision being as much like he used to be, and the rest of it is all just set dressing. So that would be my reasoning. But yeah, as we saw, the second he steps away from it, he's pulled back sort of through, or is the attempt to be pulling him back through. And then talking power levels, things go crazy at the end. But yeah, and to the point that I've like watched movies and played video games to say like, she can't do that. That's too much. She'll do the thing where she gets a nosebleed and faints and goes, oh, I overextended my reach. But clearly that's not happening here, because yeah, Wanda is actually the strongest Avenger possibly.
Yeah, and it's clear that Hayward's solution to this is just like take Wanda out, which is obviously we would all hate to see. But we got to kind of like, because he feels like a very like douchey antagonist. But we did get to see a little bit of his, I don't know, I guess reasoning behind what's happening when he sort of talks about everyone, all you people who were like in the blip, you weren't here through everything that we went through without you, and you have the luxury of optimism and stuff. And then he just kind of goes back to being a douchebag.
She throws it back at him pretty quick, but you're right. That is still a good point. It's like when you flash back to that like 5 years later or something in Endgame, it's like the world was really struggling. It was like, you know, the whole
he's
world
like,
was
we need to contain this as fast as possible. And their argument is, we don't know what's going to happen if you take Wanda out.
They're still in
napalm, you know.
They're still in Infinity War mode where everything was fun and bright and colorful, and they're in everyone else is in Endgame mode where they're like, we've seen shit, man. Like, we don't want this to happen again. And that's a reasonable reaction.
Totally. When we sort of check back in with what was happening inside Westview, there was a kind of on-the-nose line from Pietro who yells to the kids, "Unleash hell, demon spawn." So there's another kind of Mephisto Easter egg for people really driving that. If it was a question before, I feel like it's not a question now.
Totally. And I think if we're going to get from that into like the purpose of Quicksilver, Pietro, of why he's there, how he's there, again, that's another giant question mark next to kind of like Vision and how he's working. It's like, how is Pietro working? And this episode gave us a lot to chew on, but no really solid answers. And to run quickly off that theory about him and possibly Mephisto is the character?
Mephisto,
you know, often referred to as kind of like a devil with horns, pointy horns.
He's basically their Satan. He's Marvel's Satan.
But the hair? That's I saw it and was like, oh, hang on, is that like a link between the fact that he's got devil horns and that he has his hair done for the Halloween costume? Am I stretching too far? Is that too far of a stretch?
I think you're stretching too far. I think his hair is like that because
it's the comic guy.
Yeah, it's the comic guy, and he moves so fast. His hair is kind of like back on his head.
Yeah. That. I just was wondering, is that them just trying to be?
You're
clever?
Looking for like layers upon layers of visual.
Although part the onion.
It is important to remember that Wanda didn't bring him in. Like it's very very much set that she doesn't know why he looks different. She also says to Vision, she's like, she was
surprised by his arrival.
Yeah, so I'm kind of going on the train that this is my thinking with this guy. There's been theories that Quicksilver himself is Mephisto. Like this is not even a Pietro, it's Mephisto being a human for the time being. But I'm thinking this is like, if Wanda's got taking an easy modern one, if Wanda's got like 2.5 men, this is like Big Bang Theory. If it's a crossover, Mephisto has created Quicksilver, and he's like, this is my character. I'm bringing this character into your universe, and I'm going to ask some questions through this character. So that's why he's making these hell references. It's because this isn't Wanda's creation, so this is actually a Mephisto creation directly into Wanda's universe.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm kind of getting from this boy.
Interesting.
Because I guess like the only quick thought I had about that was that like as it goes on and he starts asking questions and really like, you know, breaking down the inner workings of how Wanda is creating all of this, and that's confronting to her to the point that she lashes out. I thought, as you said, she doesn't know how he came about. So for me, it kind of felt like a subconscious creation. Like, is this her guilt and her like responsibility manifesting in something that she feels guilty about, which in this case is her brother dying, and that's why he has all the inner workings. That's why he's sitting there like a, you know, on a shoulder, sort of well, I guess like a devil on the shoulder. I've overthought it, but like sitting there questioning everything, and that's what she needs to be doing. That she's repressing that by building everything around her. That was kind of my go-to response, I think.
There was also a great moment where one of the kids says, kick ass, which is a bit of an on-the-nose nod to Aaron Taylor-Johnson, obviously who played Kick-Ass in the film Kick-Ass. But is Kick-Ass, is that a Marvel property?
It's a separate, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
very
neither
separate.
DC or Marvel.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Yeah. I was like, why would they? That was
I
just
told you, Steph, layers upon layers.
Yeah. I was so surprised by that. Like at first I was like, haha, and then I was like, wait, that's like referencing. Like, yeah, I don't know. I guess because it's a kind of independent entity, it can be referenced, but
also
it
it's
seemed
no holds
funny
barred.
to acknowledge something that wasn't Marvel.
Totally. Also, it's just like they're throwing everything in there. I saw something that pointed out that the cinema, the marquee behind them in the cinema had The Incredibles up on it, obviously alluding to like a superhero family, and which is kind of what Wanda is building and all that. Like, there's just little references to everything at the moment.
It also had the Parent Trap as well, which is that's the one with the two twin
it's
Lindsay
twins,
Lohans?
Yeah.
So, and on top of all that, this is the first episode that had a double Disney Plus thing, and the second Disney Plus is like, everything in this episode is available on the streaming service, Incredibles, The Parent Trap, all on Disney Plus. So that's why you got a double Disney Plus.
We're being played.
Oh no, it's gross.
Totally. Oh, now I feel dirty. I feel like as well, like, I don't know, the whole idea of Evan Peters showing up was opening up this idea of a multiverse. But are you saying, Will, then that is not what they're doing here at all? And that this means that he cannot exist as a multiverse Quicksilver in this current MCU?
I'm such a difficult thing because I want more of this guy. After this episode, it's
I love Evan Peters.
Fun. Yeah,
he's so cool.
And he fits into the Marvel dynamic, I think, more than Aaron Taylor-Johnson ever would have. Like, he was definitely fun for that one film, but this definitely feels like you do.
I feel like he didn't really get much chance.
He didn't get much of a choice.
he came and died.
It's like they set up such a great, fun character. I think it's a possibility of, like, you look at the fact that Monica was able to be removed again. Maybe there is a world where once the hex is down, that he can exist without it. It's like he has been rewritten as this character, whether it is the Fox character or it is a dude inside the Marvel universe that looks like Evan Peters that got the chance to play Quicksilver. I do think that this is our Quicksilver now, but I'm now leaning away from the Fox universe a little bit. I think it is just a fun bit of casting that they've done.
I agree, yeah. I think it's one of those things that even if they do then choose to do something on a grander scale, Disney Plus, I'm saying here, or Disney, it's like this was just a way to sort of test the waters and show that these universes can collide in the strangest of senses, not literally. And it's when they then want to produce a film that plays around differently with those characters and with that casting, they can, because it doesn't feel like we get that shock straight away. It's a bit more like we're forgiving of it.
It's also such a wild first one to do, to be like, a guy that's in 3 Fox films over there would be a strange first ever multiverse character.
Yeah.
That's a bold, it's a bold
brilliant.
choice. Totally.
I feel like what this episode did really well also is give us a sense of, like, perhaps Wanda's limitations. We started to see people on the outskirts of town kind of like malfunctioning. There was someone that approached her at one point and said, can I do anything for you, Wanda? Do you need something changed? So they're all just kind of like these brainless servants to her, but she only has so much sort of mind power to keep a functioning, sitcom town happening around her in a way that's believable. And the further you sort of go to the outskirts of town, the more people are kind of just like robotically moving through one movement, like, poorly programmed NPCs, totally. Which is extremely worrying considering at the end of the episode, we saw this massive, expansion of Westview. It's clear she doesn't have the capability of maintaining an area that big, but I mean, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
It's concerning because up until this point, you're right, like Wanda has been the hero at the beginning, and then there was the moment where the Sword kind of started pointing fingers, being like, she is a threat, she could be the villain of this, and as the audience, we don't want that to occur, but we kind of saw when she came out of the hex and had that real sort of like grounded, aggressive moment. You're like, oh, okay, she's not the good guy still. So it's, we're up and downing in that regard, but she's never really caused any harm or any damage from what we've seen. And this is the first time that we saw that on the outskirts of that simulation. It does feel like maybe she's inadvertently hurting these people. And it started to be questioned. I think even Vision says at one point, like, are they in pain? Are they, suffering? Or is there anything going on there? And we see from obviously that woman hanging the decorations up, there's a single tear, which is quite distressing, which is held on for quite a long time as a shot. It's like, I got it. And then I'm like, I want to look away and it wouldn't let me. And following that is where Vision comes to the end of that cul-de-sac. And there's like just I love the flickering lights, which also kind of implies that's as far as her power will go up to there, along with being super eerie. It's really cool. But there's a moment there, and I need you guys to cross-check this one for me, because I went back and paused it, and maybe you'll need to after this as well, where he's looking at all those people around, and he talks to a woman and says, is that your children over there? And the camera pans past a little girl trick-or-treating, and next to the little girl is what appears to be another little girl who I really hope is a decoration or in a really convincing costume, because she looks like she's basically rotting flesh on a skeleton. And she's standing next to her. And
totally missed that.
And she's holding a bag almost like a trick-or-treat bag. I might have misread this, but it really alludes to the fact that it's like, what could be happening to the people who aren't getting enough time? And then I'm sure one of you might want to jump in here, but like the ad break following that really messed me up. Because so far those ads that have been in there have had little subtle nods to things that are relevant to the story. But the ad we got was that really kind of like radical Yo Gorilla, which might be an Australian reference, but yogurt ad, which started really fun because that little kid wanted yogurt and then suddenly couldn't open the packet. And so he dies. And I was like, oh my God.
That was really full on. So the next thing that happened after that scene, was that Yo Gorilla style ad break, and I instantly recognized it. It's nice to be moving into like eras of things that we remember from our childhood.
Totally.
Although all the other commercials have instantly had some reference to like Hydra or whatever, or Stark Industries, whereas this one it was harder to pick, and then it was just really bleak. Will, what's your take on the commercial?
I mean, within the episode itself, I would say it somewhat leans towards Vision leaving the boundary and the idea that without the magic, you'll deteriorate. It's like,
the yogurt's
without
isn't it
Yo
called
Magic?
Yo Magic, yeah.
Magic,
but then the other side of it is whether the shark is the bigger villain, being like, I want some of your magic. Like the shark is taking some of Wanda's magic, and Wanda is actually deteriorating within this hex. Like it you say it does. Maybe she is going to have that nosebleed.
I still don't think she is like the sole perpetrator of what's happening here. I mean, obviously there's a broader villain at play, but I also don't think she's fully aware of what's happening. And even though the theories about her kind of doing some kind of reactive, trauma response from grief, I think is part of it, but she doesn't seem to be fully aware of what's happening. And so it's a good theory that maybe somebody is trying to siphon her powers.
Yeah, it does.
This is happening maybe.
it does, you forget about that, or at least I have watching it, is that, yeah, this whole experience is happening, which is, the hex, the illusion, the reliving her life kind of thing. But the big question mark is the fact that she's not aware of how this is happening and all those kind of things. So whether or not we just chalk that up at the beginning to being like, oh, it just took an immense amount of power and she's done it so well that she's tricked herself and all that kind of stuff. But as episodes go on, as you both said, it's sort of like, no, it would make more sense if there is someone who is hijacking this experience or kind of twisting her to be doing it as well. Because first of all, that makes us feel better as the audience, being like, she's still a hero, she's still an Avenger. But yeah, it would make it more complex and therefore more interesting of a storyline rather than she just couldn't control her powers, because I don't think they'd let it just be something as simple as that.
But it's interesting too, because we were all kind of pointing fingers at Agnes for a long time, but there was an interaction that Vision had with her in this episode that made us really kind of feel like she's just another pawn and doesn't really have anything.
I don't know. She was wobbling a little bit before he put her finger on her forehead. She was phoning that all the way in. I mean, maybe it was just one of those bad things where it's like someone's died and they're still breathing, and you're like, come on, you could have done that better. But I felt like she was ready for each action he did to her. It was like, okay, this is the bit where I say this, and then this is the bit, and all the other people when they think that was
all a performance.
Yeah, because when they were reset, like the other people were all frozen completely, but when he reset her, she drove off. It wasn't like she was stuck in Wanda's low power mode. It was like, oh, okay, I've had my interaction with you now, Vision. I'm going to go back to looking on the stuff I need to do.
I love your theory that she's been sitting in the car for hours being like, he will be here. And oh my God, that's him. He's coming up.
Here he goes.
But of course, that was, an interesting confrontation that then basically as Vision drifted further and further away from the center, he has that interaction, I believe, before he then tries to, or, starts leaving the hex, as it were.
Yeah. Earlier before that as well, we had obviously the kids showing that they have powers. The boys have powers. Evan Peters is kind of like delivering some really meta dialogue in terms of like, he's just trying to do his part. I mean, that's what you wanted, isn't it? Like that kind of thing was really, I guess, not quite fourth wall breaking, but like letting us know that he's trying to play the character that she wants him to be and kind of aware of that somehow.
And that kind of character, or his performance of that character, has that snarkiness that allows him to sort of say it, mumble it under his breath as the cool uncle who's also the super witty one, who's also speaking so fast with that much cheek. It fits, but then if you're right, if you're listening to what he's saying, it's like he's literally spelling it out for her. Like, I'm aware of everything that's going on in here.
Yeah. She says to the kids, don't go past, when we see that Tommy has got speedy powers, don't go past Ellis Ave, which we then sort of see as the kind of outskirts of town. Do you think in the previous sort of iterations of Westview, the outskirts of town have always been sort of broken like that as she sort of reaches the limits of her power, or is it that it's deteriorating? Because we never really get to see that.
I assumed it was a bubble that followed her around, kind of like and if you just happened to be lucky enough to like land in, if she came
AOE
to this
effect,
totally, if she came to your end of the neighborhood, you got to eat, and you were like, oh my God, thank God. And then as she leaves again, you're like, well, I guess I'll just stick around.
Go back to this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the deterioration theory plays into the fact that Wanda's losing a bit of control, and that's both in Vision sort of tricking her and having Pietro also kind of dancing around her and making her suddenly she's having more moments of where she's less confident about what's happening around her, and maybe that, as you said, is causing kind of it to deteriorate before she needs to give the thing a bit of a jump start, which happens right at the end. So could be.
This is also her biggest set piece episode. Like, generally, we're on two homes, or she goes to a specific. This is the first episode where she needs to control an entire town,
doing a whole Halloween thing.
And kids. There was no kids up until now as well that she's had to be controlling. So
that's true. And that was
that's also because wasn't there one point where he was like, "Where are all the other children?"
Yeah. Which leads
episodes?
Me to be like, next episode, Vision should just be like, where are all the easy ways to get out of Westview, Wanda? And she's like, oh yeah, I totally forgot. You almost got me.
Wait a minute.
The honeymoon is why I oughta.
In the scene after that, we see kind of go back out of Westview. We see Kat Dennings is an astrophysicist, but also a hacker. I love when they have moments like that in film. They're like, I'm just going to break into the mainframe. And it's like, how do you know how to break into the mainframe?
They blast through that pretty quick. She's like, this. I mean, yep, done it. I'll type in the laptop. It's all sorted. So it's believable in that sense.
Yeah, I guess that was just a story forwarding device that we can all just accept.
Yep.
We see that Hayward is tracking the decay signature of Vision, and that begs the question, why is Hayward tracking Vision?
Mm-hmm.
I assumed it was the only thing he could do.
Yeah, well, I guess because it's the body they had. They already had Vision on. I've seen a few people tapping it as possibly like Sword wanting to create a new Ultron or something.
Okay.
I mean, because why did they sort of have his body in the first place is the question. They clearly wanted it for something.
Yeah.
Then when we kind of go back to Vision, he sees Agnes in the car. We don't know what she was trying to escape, or if she was, as you say, Will, kind of putting on some sort of performance.
Yeah.
Then when he wakes her up, the conversation that they have is, am I dead? And he says, why would you think that? And then she says, because you are. Which is a really intense moment.
Yeah, and also like a couple of strong references to knowing that he's an Avenger. And again, I still find it funny in this series for them to reference things from those larger films. But it's like, oh, I know you're dead. So clearly like news of that battle and everything was in the outside world. So I don't know. I don't get the theory that she is manipulating here or doing anything. I feel like she's a good guy.
I feel like, because then she says no one leaves, Wanda won't even let us think about it, and she's really putting the sort of blame on Wanda there. But I feel like then that makes me feel like it's a red herring.
But isn't that her snarky neighbor personality that comes flowing back once he releases her? And that's the whole like, howdy neighbor, and I'll just pop by. And that's her character. That's who she plays when Wanda.
But I feel like in previous episodes, she's done a lot to kind of keep whatever is happening.
And no one has ever actually said
fighting against it.
No one's actually ever said Wanda. It's generally like she is doing it or they are doing it. It's never Wanda is specifically hurting me. And Vision, Norm, I think, says, I'm in pain, stop them or something. It's not Wanda name drop. Right. And Vision just goes straight away, oh, well, she's got some, it has to be Wanda. So it's possible that, this is like her trying to force Vision down a path as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Okay. Then after that, we have back to the sort of hacking team. Monica's like, I'm going to go back into the Hex. It'll be real quick. I just got to meet my guy over the ridge. We don't know who her guy is. But then we sort of discover that that Monica's energy inside, or the energy inside Westview, has rewritten her cells. If we remember from previous episodes, Monica's medical scans just came back blank or whatever, and they just did not follow up on that at all.
Well, they said we need to do more blood work or something. So,
your vitals don't look great, and it probably just a glitch in the system. It's just like, no, we won't worry about that. So we kind of learn from that being inside Westview is doing things to people. I mean, there are theories that's kind of the first spark of mutant energy within this MCU, bring sort of the X-Men stuff in. Will, is that likely, do you think?
I've been, again, it's another good old flip-flop on this show, because I'm like, I feel like it's a matter of, in comics, Monica does have a path. She becomes a hero. Like, her power is photon related. They've mentioned the Hex has photon energy. One of the specific
so what is her powers? Like, how does she? I don't know anything about her as a hero.
She's within the Captain Marvel realm, not that tier, but she can do the energy blasts and the flying and all that kind of.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And they specifically mentioned the fact that she went in and out was what has rewritten her atoms. The fact that she went out of it, because we haven't actually had someone exit the Hex before.
That's
so
true.
I'm wondering if it's kind of an ending of like she's going to get powers from it and that's all. Like, and because we know about the mutants, we're adding, it's another one of those things of outside knowledge informing possible theories and crazy things. But the show is like, we just want to achieve one goal with this idea. Can you
that makes more sense, doesn't it? Yeah, than going, oh, we're going to actually, this is going to be the jumping off point for mutants around the world because the Hex expand. Like, that's a big leap that then changes everything, the canvas of what they're going to do their storytelling on. And so I think, as you said, just to make this the reason that she gets her powers, that kind of makes that can be a bit more self-contained.
Yeah. So she jumps into a car with Agent Wu, and they try to get out of there as Wanda starts expanding the universe. Kat Dennings stays behind, and she kind of gets absorbed into. I like that we saw, because when we saw the Westview kind of expansion project, all of the kind of sword stuff was like turning into like circus clowns and stuff like that, which was very funny. But we don't get to see who, I guess, like Kat Dennings' character becomes. So I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
that's like
I think
a teaser for next episode.
That's going to be an interesting element that you can add more things to that. I think back in that point where the you've got that sword storyline going on, my first reaction was like, it's starting to become less believable than what's happening on the other story, which is happening within Westview, which is you've got that kind of like your hackers who just like, they both knock out the security guards, and like it feels very, I might offend people here, it feels very Arrowverse, where it's you've got that young team of hackers on your B story who are like driving forward the mechanics of the plot while the actual characters are dealing with the emotional side of it. And that's actually fine. Like, I think you've got great performances by those actors, so that's what's making that still enjoyable. But at the same time, I found that almost laughable, the way they just sort of like go, cool, we're just going to like kung fu our way into a car and then get out of here. And she's hacking away and all that kind of stuff as well. But it leaves them all in weird positions that, will be interesting for the next episode.
Yeah, part of me finds it like a bit campy, and then the other part of me is like, I kind of like, this is the least interesting part of what's happening, but it's necessary to the story. So I kind of like that they just kind of burn through it as quickly as possible. So they're like,
totally.
And now we're over here, and Kat Dennings is just hacking into this thing, and we're just accepting that that's fine because we don't really want to spend a lot of time dwelling on that stuff.
Same thing, so even with like
it's kind of a clever choice, even if it does seem a bit tacky at times.
Well, yeah, and the same thing with kind of the villain outside of the West view. It's like they're the good guys and the bad guys, the army guy being like, I'm going to lock you guys down and handcuff you to a car. It's like, it's very black and white in the sense of who's the bad guy and who the good guy is there. Whereas I think what's happening inside of the Hex is far more developed and far more like a gray area that leaves you. Yeah. That's far more interesting.
Well, there was a really important conversation as well with between Pietro and Wanda when he's sort of bringing up the ethical dilemma of what's happening. Especially now that we see a lot of children in this world, and we know that everyone there is in pain when they're kind of being controlled by Wanda. You know, he says to her, how'd you even do all this? And she's sort of like not very forthcoming. And he says, I'm not a stranger and I'm not your husband. You can talk to me, which seems very manipulative.
That's what you say when you're not those things. Like,
I'm not the bad guy here.
I'm not the bad guy. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Don't tell anyone. Just tell me all your secrets.
I still feel that plays into the idea of him being her subconscious, him being the underlying doubt that she has in herself and what she's doing here. Because, you know, the grand overarching thing here is that she can't stay happy in this fake world. Like, that's, if we're looking
But also he seems to be totally cognizant of the fact that it is all fake and that she's doing it, and he seems kind of fine with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that makes me feel like he's super sus.
Yeah. Oh, look, again, no answers here outside of the fact that it just feels like the way that then he then gets too close to the truth, or too close to, like, he pecks a little too hard to, then we literally see Wanda before that Hex expansion, like, lash out at him and blast him back, which is kind of either her way of realizing that there's an antagonist in here with her, or is it her way of suppressing it even further, saying, I don't want to question this stuff. I don't want anyone around me questioning this stuff. I just want to live in my perfect little town, kind of thing. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and find out.
So when we sort of move back to the expansion of Westview of the Hex, Kat Dennings' character is when she's kind of going through her hacking process, she finds a file called Cataract, which is some kind of super weapon that Hayward is building. I feel like we have a character called Vision and we have a weapon called Cataract. it's kind of hard to not imagine there's some kind of link there.
Yeah.
So we feel like maybe Hayward's tracking Vision because he needs his body to help him finish some kind of weapon that he's building.
Which is
a laser? Is it a laser?
A laser? Which is the train a lot of people are going, maybe he is doing another Ultron, basically. Because Vision is the child of Ultron. There's probably some traces of Ultron is in the internet somewhere, so it might be a bit of teasing for future things there.
Yeah.
How boring is the real world that we don't have enough corporations and plans that are like names that polarize the thing they're against or for? Like, we need more clever company names that all, or like, you know, evil schemes that are all like, I get it. That's the opposite of that one. Like, I love that the Marvel Universe does that. It's like, as you mentioned, the like Cataract and Vision. I'm like, I would never put that together, but it is so handy when you think about it.
Yeah. So I think I forget what's Kat Dennings' character called?
Darcy.
Darcy,
yeah.
that's right. Yeah, so she manages to forward this find to James Woo, I think, before she gets sucked into the hex. So that's good to know because Woo and Monica Rambeau managed to kind of drive out of there and not get sucked into the hex. Kat Dennings, I guess we'll see who she is next week.
I was waiting for her she was dropping an F word just before it went through.
Yeah.
I was waiting for it to complete, and maybe the start of the next episode is, fudge, as she comes out the other side.
There is subtitles that says fudge, so I feel like she was
really?
PG. Yeah, so it does that. It is actually fudge. So I think she was PG-ified by the hex. It's like, you're going into a primetime slot here. You can't be saying that word.
Totally.
Funny.
I'm wondering whether they'll go meta with her character in the same way you get a Kick-Ass reference.
Two Broke Girls?
Whether Wanda goes to a diner and she turns up and she's the waitress. Whether it's that easy of a like, yeah.
Oh man, that's another level deep. Steph, you mentioned before that Monica was leaving because was it Monica who was saying she's got a friend on the outside who's someone to help her through this?
So this is where we kind of use our outside knowledge to try and theorize who that's going to be. What are your takes?
Will, you know more people out in the Marvel Universe than we do.
Like
based on the other properties that are in the works, I mean, a lot of people have been thinking that maybe Doctor Strange is going to turn up. That's my
guess. I think it's the fact that she keeps referencing an engineer, obviously, kind of narrows it down away from Strange. Because if anything, he is a doctor first after being a magician.
True.
Bruce Banner.
I didn't spend 9 years at mystical doctor school to be called an engineer.
Engineer of magic.
He's a magician first and a doctor second.
There you go. That's on the door as you come in.
Yeah. There's the possibility of a Bruce Banner, obviously in Professor Hulk form, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
He's
Too
got
expensive.
A lot of
Too expensive for TV.
Well, they've got to get him ready for the She-Hulk series, so it might be a little bit of a test to see if they can cope with that on a budget. There's your Shuris. She's around. She's very smart. There's also the potential of Ironheart, which is another character coming into the universe that is an engineer of an Iron Man suit. So there's that. The biggest one.
Sorry, like because I want to know who all these people are, even if they don't turn out to be the right ones. Is male, female from another planet?
Female. I think African American, and is basically the new Iron Man going forward.
Cool.
She'll be. It's very exciting. It's a very great arc.
Would that then have ties to, is it Armor Wars? Possibly?
Yep. Possibly she'll show up in there. So there's a lot of, like, if they want to start that early, there's a lot to lay the groundwork here. I just suddenly realized Hank Pym could kind of fit here because in the comics, he is actually one of the engineers of Ultron, which is related to Vision. So there's a bit of a comic book tie that you could use there. But the one everyone's jumping to, which, considering next week is an Office-themed episode and that not Jim will also be with Monica in this moment, John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic is what a lot of people are pegging and deciding that this character could be.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah, we were speculating pre-podcast about that. Yeah, the Fantastic Four is the one, but didn't know any ideas about possible casting.
Has John Krasinski been cast, or is that just a theory?
That's not a thing. There were he had meetings in like 2019. Supposedly, it's one of those like, did he really? But it's also when they were filming this show, so it could all kind of.
Will, are you telling me that his casting could be a bit of a stretch?
Nice.
See what happened there?
Very good.
Thank you very much.
It's and also we've got the Fantastic Four confirmed as a film.
He has stretchy arms.
There it is.
Yeah, good. There it is. Here's stretchy boy.
I've always found that as a power a bit creepy.
It's a bit strange, especially when he puts he puts his hand under a door. in like
It looks
in
better
those
in
old
comic book
movies.
form than in like movie or TV form, I think. But you know, I think
like it.
we've had so many missteps or like false starts with the Fantastic Four that I think, you know, this could be a chance to bring them in. And as we said, there's talks about there being another film or something
It's
happening in the next
confirmed
phase.
for at least they haven't given a date, but I feel like 2024 is too easy of a year not to give the Fantastic Four. There's a 4 in that
Interesting.
year.
And then hopefully we see this next episode, as you said. Like it would be nice that they don't disappear for an episode, because we've got what 2, 3 left, I think.
We got 3
It's
left.
very exciting, isn't it? I feel like I don't even know like a sliver of your kind of broader world knowledge, Will. But even when you start talking about these different characters being woven in a clever way, I'm like, I don't know why I'm excited, but I am.
It's interesting because we're now getting to a realm. We're getting to a realm where comic books, as you said, Will, obviously crossed over heaps, and there was always like rewrites and stories that took place that did that in a clever way. That now we're getting that combined with TV and movie studios and everyone mixing properties so they can combine these things in preparation for films and stuff, which again I'm all for. Like I love these worlds. I love superheroes. I'm not anti it in that sense, but it does have a second layer of sort of production behind it all, where it's like they're moving pieces around a chessboard for more than just the cool storytelling. It's like there's more stories to tell here, and if they set it up well, they they've got themselves another one in the bank.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have potential my guy that they're going out to meet could maybe be Stretchy Guy, could maybe be Banner. We don't really know. Also, Wanda's kids. I think we saw that one of them has like super speedy powers, and the other one has what is the psychic-y power that he's?
It's kind of
like
Wanda's
a mini Wanda version?
Yeah.
Okay.
And those costumes were a little bit of a throwback to, I think, is it Speed? So Speed and what's
Wiccan
the other?
is the other character, and it's Wiccan's costume is exactly what he wears when he's grown up, and so that was very exciting to see.
Oh yeah, cool, awesome. Oh, I love that. So the other thing we see is that Vision, obviously, when he breaches the hex and he enters the real world, he starts to break down. And no one goes out to help him. No one's like, oh, Vision's made it out. Let's go like help him out, which kind of sort of suggests that maybe they don't need him to be alive, and maybe it's better that he's dead.
I think they probably don't want to. Yeah.
Just his body so they can build their, cataract weapon or whatever, which kind of sucks. And
it's heart-wrenching. Like that scene, the way that is shot is beautiful. And if I saw a deteriorating Paul Bettany, I would run to his aid, is what I'm saying. Like that's my connection to this series now, is I love him so much. And the character of Vision was such, I think you might have mentioned this in previous episodes, Vision really did nothing for me as he was introduced through the films, because for anyone who wasn't aware of who he was, you're like, this is silly. But he carries it with such sort of brevity, like it's just such a wonderful performance. And then for him to be going through this almost fully sacrificed moment was heartbreaking, because it really was, oh gosh, it's very rare we see an Avenger or anyone die, and when they do it, they really hammer it home. I'm like, not again, not twice with one character.
I think we were all clinging to the idea that she'd somehow resurrected Vision and that he would just go on to live even after Westview had been destroyed or whatever. But this kind of proves that Westview is necessary for his existence, which really kind of sucks. Unless Westview can just exist forever.
Maybe. Westview for the whole world. Just while we're on Vision, a little throwback to the idea that when he was at the end of that cul-de-sac, and that was a really haunting moment for me. Case in point, because they were still playing the Malcolm in the Middle music in the background. As he looks at all the people, they're still playing this like bam, 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 bam guitar. And I was like, this is really unsettling. But the moment that he then transforms into his Vision costume, that's when the music hits that sort of Marvel cinematic score. And it carried on from there. And from that moment, when he flies upwards and then moves towards the edge of the hex, it's like we're in like, this is Vision, who is now I would say fully formed in this character. I don't see him going back to the hubby back at home or anything like that. I think we've crossed a line with him or his character, because that is a point that when the hex does expand, it's done because she's reaching out to try and save Vision. She goes a little overboard. She could have just moved it a meter. She decides to move it 10 kilometers, or by the looks of it. And from what I understand, it's still going when the ep finishes.
It did look like it stopped.
I wonder too what this will mean for, if people, with the photon energy or whatever, are sort of physically changed when they're taken in by the Hex. What is the process of Vision going outside and back in again, if there is one at all?
I think he's just a big question mark because he is so unnatural. Like, is one way to put it. Yeah.
I think when it passed over, he basically was back to normal. Like, we saw that quick shot of him laying on the ground. It was all pieced back together. And I guess the other quick thing in the whole Darcy and Vision stuff is that Vision did see her calling out for help, and as long as his mind doesn't get reset, I feel like that might be a potential easy get Darcy back to normal quickly moment. Where he's like, oh, you're that person that was like, help him.
He's right there. Yeah.
That is a good pickup point for next week's ep. Yeah, I think those characters are literally in proximity of each other, and she's trying to reach out to him, he's trying to reach out to her. There could be a lot of questions answered in that little interaction.
Do we think Monica and James are going to continue? Because we didn't see them get absorbed by the Hex. They sort of seemed to make it out. But do you think
they're
that
fine.
maybe they will get sucked in because is the engineer that they're going to meet?
If we lose them into it, we have no point of reference outside the Hex.
Yeah. No, but I'm thinking about them having powers and stuff potentially as a result of being in Westview. Is that maybe a thing?
I think you're tapping into something that could potentially be if and when Monica finds her way back in there, she might be the first person that can come in and be like, oh, I'm not affected. This is leading up to something that could be a game changer for near the end of the series, that she can then find her way in. Because previously she mentioned that she's going to need a bunker style thick lead line tank to get in. And now I think this could be used as a bit of a rationale as to why she can start influencing something inside, because it's almost getting to the point of frustration that no one could really have a dialogue within the Hex. So that could be the Deus Ex Machina that they use to let it go through.
It's so exciting.
At the same time, if they can get John Krasinski inside the world while they have shaky cam office style stuff.
I don't think I can handle that. That'd be so weird.
So wait, next week is rumored to be The Office, not Modern Family, or
it is Modern Family, but it is that style. You can easily
gotcha.
Yeah, because I think the idea has been that it's all family sitcoms, right?
Yes, for sure.
And so it makes sense that Modern Family would be the one that they would reference, being one of the biggest shows of our current generation, and the fact that they do that fourth wall breaking style. I feel like John Krasinski would break the whole thing for me.
Is it too close to home for him to be doing it? Yeah,
it's
possibly.
Too weird. It's too
It could be
weird.
strange. And so as we get close to rounding this out, how many episodes have we got left? Is it just the 2?
3.
Or have we got 3 to go?
It's likely one more sitcom-y, and then we're going hard into Marvel action.
Yeah.
I see. Because, it does really feel like beyond Modern Family, that is the most up-to-date sort of trope that you could be playing off. So beyond that, I hope my fear is that those last 2 episodes lose that charm or lose that that sort of set dressing. I'm sure enough has been established up till then. I'm just being negative for the sake of it, but I do hope that can carry all the way through and it can really turn into an absolute blown up finale that answers a lot of questions. But I'm really looking forward to seeing them do that trope next week.
It's been such an amazing, I don't want to say surprise hit, because I think as soon as we saw the trailer we knew this would be something special, but even people who have no concept of the MCU have been watching this and loving it. I'm getting random text messages from people being like, are you watching this show? It's so amazing. It's so exciting. I'm part of me is devastated that they didn't release it all in one bingeable hit, and then the other part of me just loves that we have this week period to digest it and talk about it and speculate about what's going to happen in the next episode.
It also feels bittersweet every time an episode finishes, because they jump, the time periods they jump, it's so drastic that you're like, oh, there felt like so many other things they could have played around with in that sitcom or in that style of TV, and there's so many elements of TV that they could play in, but I think if they dwelled in it too long, it would start to overstay its welcome. So it's nicer to have that feeling rather than I am tired of the black and white version, or I'm sick of the 70s sitcoms or something like that. It's just such a great aesthetic to hang a series off, and they're just moving through it so fast. You're like, you can't come back to this anymore. So it's a lovely feeling at the end of the day.
Well, I think we will leave it there. That is it for this Pocket Watch on WandaVision. If you guys enjoyed our wild theories, as always, please just make sure you check out our Patreon at patreon.com/backpocket. We also do other great things, live streams, morning news, crazy talk shows, and you could become a sponsor. And also we have a podcast of this. If you're watching this on YouTube, we also do a podcast version of this. If you are listening to the podcast, I feel it necessary to tell you that Gus has poorly cosplayed as Quicksilver today. You can't see it, but his hair looks crazy, and he's got, is that masking tape across your shirt?
This is just my bed hair. This is just what I woke up with. But, yeah, this is just my PJs and my bed hair. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, you're right. If you are listening to the podcast version and you're curious to what I look like, you can jump across to our YouTube channel and see the wonder that is my Quicksilver outfit.
Yeah. Also, if you could leave us a review, that would be really great. I know people are always asking you to leave their podcast a review, but it actually does help so much helping other people find us. So that would be really, really amazing.
A review of the podcast, not of the costume, please.
Yes.
Any worded review is good.
That's true. That's true. Gus, Will, thanks so much for the chat.
Thanks. It's been fun.
Thank you.
See you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.